Yay, it's beginning to feel a lot like Christmas. Got a new clutch slave. That's going on the car. There's a bunch of stuff on this thing that I don't need. Yay, it feels smooth. Yay. The first thing I like to do, there's always a restrictor underneath the, well, usually a restrictor underneath these. And what that does is it allows smoother operation of the clutch pedal. And it works as a restrictor to slow down the speed of fluids that flow between the reservoir and the clutch cylinder. And I'm not a big fan of those because when I'm racing I want my clutch to engage as quickly as possible. And so I like to remove them. You can just use a little pick. Pulls that piece out. There's a spring in there. I don't need that. And we're ready to rock and roll. Now, one of the things when you're bleeding that you end up doing is spending most of that pedal pumping time filling up this cylinder so that it has enough fluid in there to displace the air. So what I like to do when I have this thing apart, usually this thing comes with a rubber plug, which happens to fit pretty good in there. And I like to take a pick and put a hole in it and put one of these little straw things that you get off of a spray can into it so that I have an airtight seal. Yay. Now I'm going to take this drill and put it through the cap. Alright, let me show you what this is. Now what I've got here is a means of putting fluid in this and compressing this at the same time so that I can suck up fluid and push most of the air out. I'm using Castrol synthetic .3.4. That's it right there. Just pour some in this little cap. You see the air bubbles? I let off of this, it pulls hydraulic fluid in. Push the air out. Slowly pull the hydraulic fluid in. Bench bleeding implies the obvious, that the part is off the car. Regardless of the methods you employ to bleed your clutch hydraulics, it's imperative that when you're done and everything's assembled back on the car, that you have bled all of the air out of the clutch hydraulic system. The fluid that you're pumping around is going through a very small opening. This method saves a whole lot of crawling underneath the car and back into the driver's seat repeatedly as you're bleeding. Get all the air bubbles out. Now, this thing's full. Alright, here's my old broken slave. Get the line broken loose. And I'll be right back. The nice thing about this little modification is you can pull this tube and not leak brake fluid because it's just a little pinhole. And it kind of makes a pretty good seal when you pull that thing out. I'll put that down for a moment so I can put this away safely. It's time to change hydraulic cylinders. I want to hold this down below the clutch reservoir so that doesn't suck air up in it. If anything, it'll leak down. And I'm going to pull this off so I can change out the crush washers. And the new one came with the set. Now all we have to do is take the new cylinder, pull the plug, and tighten this nut down. Now take a second, and everything that you just got brake fluid on, grab a rag and wipe it up. Because brake fluid eats right through paint, any other petroleum product really. And stuff will bubble and peel. You don't want brake fluid left around. Clutch sleeve bolts get 13 pounds. That's 13 right there. They're already there. You want to pull the cap off the reservoir, look in it, make sure you got fluid. This is the point where you want to top it off. Keep your rags handy. Actually, I did something wrong. I should have put this around it to start. When you're messing with that, it's a good idea to do this. In order to bleed the clutch, the only real tool you need is a 10mm wrench. I'm going to just put this on here. Install a rubber hose. You want to make sure that's tight on there. Brake fluid's nasty stuff. I have seen them get blown off when you crack the valve. So I'm going to loosen the valve now. It's loose enough. I'm going to take the other end of that tube and I'm going to put it in this used brake fluid can, which is sitting right here. And that way each time I crack it, it drains safely into the can. Don't forget to remind all your friends that they're as useful as a block of wood. Crack the valve and relieve that pressure. You'll hear the air. Then close it. Remove block of wood. Pull up pedal. Check reservoir. Reservoir okay. Compress pedal. Block of wood. Crack the bleeder. When I raise the pedal, see that fluid level dropped. It's not a very big reservoir. It's a little bit of work to keep it full. Each time you do this, check your fluid levels. I don't hear any air. Press pedal. Something I want you to see here. When I release the bleeder valve, you'll see that cylinder contract. I don't hear any air coming out. I think we got it all. I think we'll see you later, pal. I've got pedal. Oh, that feels great. Cars with a stock hydraulic system have a clutch fluid accumulator, which is a little canister that runs off of the line right over here. Now what that does is it provides a dampening effect that takes some of the feel of the clutch actuation out of the pedal. It just softens things up a bit by adding some fluid pressure. The problem with that is if the system runs completely dry, it can be difficult to get all the air out of it. What a lot of people do is remove the accumulator because it really isn't crucial to the functionality of the clutch, and they install the stainless steel braided line, which is a little bit firmer than the rubber line, less squishy, and therefore a little bit more clutch slave cylinder travel. It's also a lot easier to bleed.